Hi, I'm David Manti with Cannabis Equipment News, and with me today is Tyler Williams, founder and chief technology officer of Cannabis Safety and Quality, or CSQ. Thank you very much for joining me today, Tyler.
Hi, thanks for having me, David.
I'd like to start by just learning a little bit more about CSQ. Tell me a little bit more what you guys do with standards in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a certification program owner, which essentially means that we develop standards for the cannabis industry, and then we license the use of those standards to accredited certification bodies. And just to elaborate on what accredited certification bodies means, these are auditing bodies who get a third-party accreditation by an accreditation body similar to ANSI, or which is now ANAB. And basically it's part of a bigger, much bigger checks and balance system, but it's one aspect of the checks and balance system to ensure that we're giving impartial audits.
Okay. Now, why does a cannabis company want to be audited?
There's many reasons. There's so many benefits. The main goal of CSQ is to eliminate recalls, improve product safety and quality, and improve transparency throughout the supply chain. Now, that is the overall goal. There are several benefits to becoming certified and to being audited against the standard. Some of those improvements, some of those benefits include improvement to product consistency, verification that your facility is meeting regulatory requirements, added protection of your brand and bottom line, and then as well as enhanced marketability, because going through the program and becoming certified, you get put on this list, a public database of all of these certified facilities. And with that, dispensaries or retailers can go to that list, determine that, okay, well, these people are compliant. I want their products in my store. And it adds that enhanced marketability. It also provides an increase to consumer confidence and brand loyalty. Once again, our goal is to not only have the retailers go to this public database, but also consumers. So if you're a consumer and you have, your favorite brand of CBD or medicinal cannabis products, and you just want to verify that they're in line with a standard that you think is good enough to meet your desires and goals and your safety requirements that you have personally, you'll be able to go to this list as well. So it also adds that consumer confidence padding in as well. And then lastly is there's benefits around insurance. Typically, especially when you're a new facility opening up, your insurance broker or provider is going to come on site. They're going to drill you on all your SOPs and your procedures. And most of those SOPs and procedures are part of the CSQ program. Those are things that we look at, such as maintenance, such as your recall program, things like that. So those are all things that the insurer is looking for as well, because those are going to in turn affect what your price is with that insurance company and how risky your business is.
Okay. I'd read that you had worked with cultivators and manufacturers on audits to create this certification scheme. Could you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like, kind of working with the cultivators and manufacturers?
Yeah, so I probably started this project probably about 3 years ago now. So it's been a while. And when we first originally developed CSQ, it was more of a GMP level audit. So it was much lower level. And basically, before we even started using the audit in the industry, I wanted to go out and test it, just like you should with every audit, right? And that's exactly what we did. We went to several different manufacturers, growers, extractors in the industry, basically just did a bunch of mock audits, found out where there was holes, where we were missing pieces, where because a lot of the information was taken from the pharmaceutical industry, from the food industry, from the dietary supplements, kind of just a hodgepodge of regulations, because there is none or very limited for the cannabis industry. So with that, there was a lot of holes in the beginning and gaps that we realized that needed to be covered. And we went back, and it was kind of a rinse and repeat type scenario where we corrected things. Then we went back out and did some more audits, found some more gaps, corrected those things, and went back and just kind of repeated this cycle until we got into the official pilot audits, which happened the end of last year.
What were some of those holes or gaps that you found out once you got into the field?
Yeah, so a lot of it was around the testing requirements of cannabis products. Typically, especially in the food industry, it's all about preventative measures. A lot of companies do final testing on products, but it's more for quality reasons, not necessarily for safety reasons. And the cannabis industry has, and because of regulations, has kind of flipped that mentality. So there's not really a lot of preventive controls in regulations, and everything is so heavily focused on that final product testing. So that was where a lot of the gaps were and where the differences were. Additionally, you're talking about a completely different product, although it's still a plant, and obviously with food, there's crops and things like that. So there are similarities, but there are some minute differences between those that need to be identified.
So, who like the benefit of being certified is that, I mean, it's not that the industry is regulated by the FDA or anything on a federal level. So is the motivation for manufacturers and cultivators to kind of get certified, is that to sort of be prepared for impending federal regulation?
Yeah, that's one aspect of it. So yes, it's coming. I think we're all aware that federal legalization is around the corner. We don't know when exactly, but there's a lot of speed picking up in office right now, especially with the MORE Act passing the Senate the end of last year. But yeah, so there's a lot of push from these large corporations and MSOs from their corporate to push down and say, hey, these regulations are coming. A lot of these people, or the VPs of quality, or whoever is in charge of these safety and quality divisions in these companies, come from heavily regulated industries already. So they've been through this whole rigmarole, whether it's pharma or food, dietary supplements, whatever. So yes, they're kind of getting ahead of it. The other part of it too is that the regulations set by the state, and I'm specifically in the U.S., those are your bare minimum requirements. There's a lot more that goes into production that these facilities already have in place that go above and beyond the requirements of their states that they're operating in. But also, now they're saying, well, okay, we want to ensure that we have the top program. And so this is going above and beyond those minimum requirements, and being able to show everyone that, hey, we have this top flight certification by our products, essentially, right?
Right.
So it gives that, once again, that brand protection and consumer confidence level.
So is this something that would only be of interest to people with a premium product?
Oh, absolutely not. We have people, companies that are small. There was a company that participated in the pilot program that I believe is 2,000 square feet or something like that. So you're talking about a tiny commercial kitchen operation to facilities that are 100,000 square feet or more. So it's meant for everyone. Now, it is a very stringent audit standard. So there is going to be a little bit more trouble for the smaller companies than it is for the big corporate MSOs. But the benefit for the smaller companies is you only have one site to worry about, where those large MSOs have 10 or however many facilities across wherever they're located.
Okay, I apologize for my ignorance, but what does MSO stand for?
Sorry, multi-state operators.
Okay, okay. Thank you. I've learned one thing today. No. One thing I was interested in was CSQ's work with NCIA. Could you tell me a little bit about how it fits in with the association?
Yeah, so I've been with NCIA for about 2 years now. I joined and started in the policy council. I'm still part of the policy council, so there's a lot of policy work that goes into it. Typically, the work that myself and CSQ does with the organization is in forms of just throwing information about GMPs, about different regulations and things like that to the industry. We provide guidance. If, for example, GRAS is a term that stands for generally recognized as safe. It's generally used for the food industry. However, there was some policy work that we were trying to do around that at the NCIA. That's kind of when they call on someone like me who has that experience with food regulations to do that. So most of my work with the NCIA is just kind of supportive to be that food safety expert and liaison. And then I am also on the Cannabis Manufacturing Committee, and we do various posts and things like that. One of the things that we're actually working on that should be published here pretty soon is nomenclature for the industry. So standardizing terms and different things like that. Rick Simpson oil is a very specific type of extracted cannabis oil. What is the industry definition for that? And so developing things like that so we can create a standardization across the industry.
Um, I saw that you're also on the Safe Quality Food Institute's Cannabis Working Group. Tell me what that's responsible for.
So it's kind of and honestly I don't really know if it's active anymore. We haven't had a meeting in quite a while. But the core of the work we were doing, and SQF is a GFSI approved certification program, similar to what CSQ is attempting to do for the cannabis industry, except they are for the food industry. And so what we were trying to do at the time was create an addendum, and they actually use this addendum in Canada, but unfortunately SQF, their parent company FMI, which is the Food Marketing Institute, only allows for certification of cannabis food facilities in countries where it's federally legal. So right now you can only, for example, get an SQF certificate if you're an edibles manufacturer in Canada.
Mm.
We created the work that we did in that group was creating the addendum for them to use in conjunction with the SQF audit.
Is a lot of this certification all start with edibles or food products and then looking to branch out into other aspects or other products?
So that's not how we started, and there's not too many cannabis certification programs, if any, that I'm aware of, that are actual certification programs, not just audit forms.
Mm.
A lot of them will tend to focus on the manufacturing or the growing side of it. CSQ took a holistic approach. We're creating a program from seed to sale. So currently we have 4 standards: the growing and cultivation of cannabis, the manufacturing of food and beverage products, the extraction of cannabis plants, and then the manufacturing of cannabis dietary supplements. Additionally, in 2021, we're adding a standard for cosmetics, one for cannabis packaging material, food service, and then retail as well. So once again, we are trying to be a seed to sale solution for certification for the cannabis industry.
So, I mean, it sounds like you've got a lot going on. How big is your team helping you craft these standards?
So it's pretty much me. I do have a couple auxiliary teammates that do a lot of back office functions that they definitely don't get enough appreciation for. And then also we have committees and working groups as well. So our technical advisory committee is consisted of 5 members, and they are various walks of life in the industry, from producers and manufacturers to growers and cultivators to consultants to database systems that service the industry, et cetera. So that group of people, that technical advisory committee, the TAC committee, they do a lot of the work and a lot of the research that goes into developing the standards. They kind of have the final approval. So I can't just go and say, hey, I want to change this on the standard. It's not how it works. It has to go through a intense approval process, and then it goes into public comment period where the public is allowed to make their comments and suggestions on the changes and things like that.
Okay, so you are a prolific and a patient man.
Yes.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about your history with ASI, just because it sounds like you had a long history in food safety, conducting more than 3,000 audits with major food and beverage companies. Tell me a little bit about what you learned in that previous role that you're hoping to bring to cannabis industry.
Yeah. So I took a unique path in the food industry. Most people, right out of undergrad, if that's what they're going to school for, they take a more traditional approach by working in a lab, working as a QA manager or something along those lines, kind of boots on the ground. I took a different approach and started working for an auditing body right after undergrad. And so from there, I was able to not only just see one production process, but thousands of production processes across so many different industries. And so with that unique experience, I've kind of had a jump start on some of these other people who go into a QA position for a little while and then go and try to do the work that I'm doing. So I kind of seen a holistic approach from the beginning, and I think that benefited CSQ because we've seen almost every type of problem that could happen in a facility, we've probably seen it. So,
Right.
yeah, ASI has been around for a very long time. They're very, very prolific in the food safety world. And yes, they conduct several thousands of audits per year.
So, what was it like being in everything from a mom and pop, so to speak, food and beverage manufacturer, all the way to some of the big guys? And how does that compare to mom and pops all the way through the major operations or MSOs in the cannabis industry?
They're very similar, and when comparing food and the cannabis industry, I'll share a story with you from a few months back. I was doing some consulting work through my nonprofit that I have here in Missouri, and I was helping a local farmer. And the difference, between going there and a big corporate is, I was able to go to his house and eat lunch with his family, during our break. Whereas, big corporate, it's not like that. So, you're working with a family-owned company or a small company like that. It's a lot more personable. Generally, I by the end of the audit or the end of the consulting work, whatever I'm doing, I know everyone in that facility on a first name basis. Whereas a corporate, you're working with a couple of key people, and there's a lot going on, so you don't really have that personable connection with them.
Okay. Have you worked with some of the smaller operators as they've kind of grown into larger operations?
Yes, several. Actually, I have a missed voice. I have a voicemail from one of my favorite ones down in Florida. And this is a small chocolate manufacturer that actually started in the food industry, has been in the food industry for a very long time, and they're moving to the CBD space and producing CBD infused candies. And so, watching them kind of grow over the years has been really awesome and really cool to see.
Um, so the CSQ standards launched last year in 2020. How has it been ever since everything launched?
Yeah, so it's kind of a weird. So we launched in the summer of 2020, and that was because like I said, we have to have a public comment period. We wanted to
Mhm.
introduce the standards to all of our stakeholders, to the cannabis industry, and then so we had our public comment period, and then we did our pilot audits, and then did some minor revisions before the end of the year, and then we launched officially January 4th. So in that time frame of about 6 months, we've gained a lot of traction in the industry. We've gained a lot of support, a lot of good feedback from the industry and from stakeholders. We have a lot of commitment from some very, very large companies, some medium and small size companies that plan to get certified either in 2021 or 2022. So very exciting. I did not think it would take off as it did. So it's very good to see and very exciting to see that other people besides me are excited about it.
Well, I think there's a lot of unknown in the industry right now, and kind of a lot of people are looking for. I hate to say it, but like, for lack of a better term, some sort of rules.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's kind of the question I get the most is, how did you develop the standards and how did you come up with this stuff? Well, we use science, facts, and general best practices that we know about. And we kind of just, once again, just hodgepodged all these things together to make the standard what it is today. And then test it and try it and test it and try it. And that's how we came up with these requirements. So you're right. The industry has been craving for something like this for so long. Now, hopefully, even if they don't go through the certification, the standards are publicly available. There's no reason why you can't follow them. Even if you don't want to go through the certification process, at least use it as a tool, as guidance for yourselves and for your company.
Right. I mean, that's not out of the ordinary where facilities will follow like GMP but never get certified, right?
Correct. Yeah, and I mean, if you're a food facility, you're required to follow GMPs in the food industry here in the U.S. And however, the FDA doesn't have the resources to audit every small mom and pop facility, and most of those smaller facilities, unless they're required from a retailer or someone else, they're not going to get certified. Most of the time because it is an added expense to an already expensive production process. So yes, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the question again?
No, just about people kind of following the
Yeah,
standards.
so yeah,
Yeah.
people will follow GMPs now and without even getting an audit. And I could walk into a food facility that's never been audited before, and I guarantee you they have a whole procedure on GMPs.
So, is there a position that exists in the industry yet that would follow these standards, or is it sort of now that we have them, people will create somebody on like an operational level that will try and adhere to these?
So we've been working with different consulting groups throughout this. ASI is a large company, and they have many companies underneath it. One of them, they have a consulting division, WQS, who is our another one of our certification bodies. I believe they have a consulting division, and then various consulting groups, whether it be in the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, or the cannabis industry, have come to us asking for guidance because they know that this standard is going to become bigger and bigger as time goes on, and they want to be able to provide support to their clients. So we've already been in talks with those consulting companies. So to answer your question, there's multiple routes a company can take. They can either, if they have the competency or the personnel within to develop it themselves, great. Definitely recommend using it if that person has the time or that team has the time to do so. Otherwise, you can go out and find consultants. And if they're good consultants, they should be able to, that have been in the industry for a while, they should be able to look at the requirements, see that these are nothing, nothing out of the ordinary. These are pretty standard requirements for the cannabis industry, and be able to help your facility establish those and build those SOPs and forms that are required as part of the audit.
So the two pilots you were talking about, or are those the news that came out the last month or so, the Curaleaf and One Plant certification?
Yeah, so Curaleaf and One Plant were participating in our pilot program at the end of last year. And kudos to them, because part of this pilot program, the facilities did not get time to prepare.
Okay.
There were several facilities that went through that pilot program, and those were the only two facilities that passed the CSQ audit.
How many were in the program?
So we had 10 facilities on this last one.
Oh man, and only two made it, huh?
Correct. And that was expected. And part of that pilot program was is part of a much larger research paper that we hope to get published a little bit later this year. But basically what we did was we did a GMP audit and the CSQ audit simultaneously. And we compared those scores between all the facilities, and we show the fact that GMP is good and everyone should follow GMPs. It's part of CSQ to follow GMPs, but it's just a starting point. And there's several things that aren't included in GMPs that are included in CSQ and other higher level standards that will make your business run smoother. You'll have better quality, more consistency, better products, higher safety, etc. So we wanted to highlight those differences between the two audits, not saying GMP audits are bad, but highlighting that GMP should be a starting point to a much bigger certification.
So regarding the certification, how often does a facility need to be audited in order to maintain that?
Yeah, so if you are in good standing, which means 70% or higher is passing. The score of 70 to 79 means you have to get a surveillance audit. So instead of getting your annual audit, if you scored an 80% or higher, you're on an annual cycle. But if you score between that 70 and 79 range, then you have to get another audit in 6 months. Now, if you don't get above an 80 on that second audit, then you will get put in suspension and then possible withdrawal from the program. So essentially, if you get put on surveillance once, you need to get above an 80% on that audit that you get in 6 months to go back to the annual cycle and get back on the normal schedule.
Okay. So say a company wants to start the process. How does it start? How long does it take, and what does it look like?
Absolutely. So it depends on multiple things: the size of the company, the resources that company has available to them. Typically, what we say for, and this is GFSI audits across the board, is about 6 months of preparation. Now that can be done a lot quicker if you already have a lot of those things in place. 6 months is generally speaking if you have nothing in place. So it depends on the size of the company and the processes and products that they have. For example, if you're vertically integrated and you create every type of product under the sun, then it's going to take a lot longer than a small mom and pop operation that only focuses on producing one product. However, so the kind of the flow of certification, there's about 7 or 8 steps to that. The first step should always be going to the website and downloading the standard, reading it, and becoming aware of the different requirements and things that are involved in it. And then the next step would be, okay, we are going to we have decided that we want to get certified to CSQ. Well, then you would reach out to one of our licensed certification bodies. Currently, we have 2, but we're looking to add some more. And so you would reach out to them. They would assist you with, they would gather your information and assist you with scheduling the audit. There is an offsite document review that is done prior to the facility audit. And so what that document review does is the auditor will look at all your documentation offsite, make sure that it's compliant just as it is as documentation. And then when they go on site at the facility, they not only are reviewing the facility to make sure, there's no pests, there's no, physical contaminants, things like that, but they're also making sure that you're doing what was said in those SOPs and those procedures that they already reviewed. So it's kind of a 2-step process once you get to the audit. And then after the audit is complete, they will have corrective actions that they have to, for each nonconformance. So say you were missing an SOP for maintenance, then you would have to show that certification body what steps you've taken to remediate that nonconformance and correct the issue, and then what was the root cause of that issue as well, and how do we stop this from happening again.
So, of those 8 facilities that failed the pilots, what were some of the common problems that you saw across them?
There was a lot, and this will hopefully be in the report that gets published a little bit later this year. But some of the issues that we've seen, the biggest one was HACCP. So we are a HACCP-based system, or standard, excuse me. And what HACCP means is Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. And basically, it's a way to assess all the risk at your facility. You take your process flow, you take all your ingredients, all the things that go into manufacturing your product, including the packaging material, all of it, and you assess the risk and you evaluate where you need to put preventive controls in place. So that is essentially the core of CSQ. It is the biggest part of CSQ. If you're missing part of that, you're probably looking at a major nonconformance, which is a significant percentage. It's 10% off of your final score. So HACCP is not an area you want to miss. That was the largest. And once again, the facilities did not have time to prepare for this. And a lot of facilities didn't have a HACCP plan at all, or had a very, very poor HACCP plan in place.
Okay. When I hear stringent audit standard, that also sounds expensive to me. So is it an expensive process to go through?
In the cannabis industry, it's pretty cheap considering on the expenses that they get. And for the most part, and I can speak on behalf of ASI because I've seen their pricing. They do not charge a green tax like some other services to the cannabis industry. The same price you get for an SQF audit is the same price you're going to get for a CSQ audit, which is nice because we do sometimes see that prices increase when people put the word cannabis in the title of it, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not necessarily pricey. Once again, it kind of depends on your facility. If you're a small facility, your audit can be between 1 to 2 days, whereas if you're a large facility, you're capped out at 5 days, but you might need all 5 of those days. And typically those audits are priced out per day.
Okay. So of the thousands of facilities that you've been in, what was the worst?
The worst, I don't know. In the food industry or cannabis industry?
The cannabis industry, but I'm also interested in the food industry as an active eater. No.
The food industry, I have a funny story I'll share. Then it wasn't me. It was actually one of my auditors. And I just got the phone call to talk about this. So this was a while back before FSMA rolled out. There was an auditor who was in a storage and distribution warehouse. And the doctors, this was a time when doctors were okay to leave open. That's not okay anymore. But it was also hunting season, and it was in the middle of Arkansas. And they heard a gunshot, and then next thing they know, a deer is running through the warehouse through one of the open dock doors. So I get the call from this auditor saying, how do I write this up on the audit report? And so that was kind of a funny scenario in the
Oh
food
my goodness.
industry.
Was it a wounded deer?
I wasn't wounded. They said
Oh my
it
God.
probably was just startled from the gunshot and then just took off, and the dock door was open and just happened to run through the facility.
Oh,
So that was an
unfortunate.
interesting one.
Yeah.
As far as cannabis, I have been to facilities where I think the biggest pet peeve for me is when I walk in and everything is in notebook papers and they're
Mm,
handwriting things. I've seen facilities where they will have a stainless steel table and they have, this is kind of essentially their lab, and they're writing in Sharpie what product type or whatever is in that on the table. And so when you're working with all these chemicals in a lab, that stuff gets washed off really easy. So things like that, and just paper-based functions where they're writing in notebooks. I've seen kind of the worst document control things you can think of. But as far as cannabis facilities and cleanliness and things like that, typically they're a lot better than the food industry, because there's not as much going on as there is in the food industry. With food production, it's depending on the production, it can be very, very messy. Whereas cannabis it's pretty easy to keep clean and things tidy. So I would say the documentation on the cannabis side is the worst for me.
okay. You had said that, it seems like federal legalization is around the corner. How big is the corner?
I think we'll find out. It's so hard to tell right now, and with the Georgia elections going off in the Democrats' way, I think it helps with legalization. It definitely doesn't hurt anything. Um, I think with the MORE Act, there's a lot of things wrong with it, but it's a step in the right direction. I actually I was speaking at an event not too long ago where we were specifically talking about the elections and future predictions. And one of the panelists spoke on how we kind of hope that the MORE Act is not the final thing that leads towards descheduling of cannabis, but we hope that there's a MORE Act 2.0, if you will, that's a little bit better. And so hopefully that period of time between what we have now and the 2.0 version of that is shorter than what we're used to with the government. So
Okay. Okay. With 5 new states coming online this last election, how does that impact CSQ?
It doesn't necessarily impact us too much. We are a global certification program, so we're not restricted to the United States. Just happens the United States and Canada happen to be where most of the cannabis producers of the world are. So we are a global standard, so the impact there is very limited. Now, we will be watching and waiting for what regulations come out in those states, because we want to be able to observe those, see if those regulations make sense with what we're trying to do. And one of the things also that I do and that CSQ does in our time is work with these regulators to help develop regulations for whatever state that they're in. We've done some work with the state of Florida and the state of New York, who have pretty stringent regulations. And that offer is always open to any state who wants help with regulations. We don't charge for it. We just want to make sure that there is standardization in the industry and help out where we can.
So I guess with states making inquiries, what are your predictions for future states to come online? Who do you think? What do you think are the ones that are next?
So I'm located in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm from Missouri. I'm really hoping that we get rec on the bill this year. That would be nice. I've heard rumors about the MoCan trade organization here working on something along those lines. So I would love to see that. I also think we're going to see rec pass in New York as well. And then I think even though Texas is a very conservative state, they've been looking at medicinal legalization for some time now. So that would be a huge win for the industry as well.
Um, One thing that I always like to ask is, what brought you to the industry? What brought you over from food safety and into cannabis?
Yeah, so actually, a kind of funny story. When I first started with ASI, I was tasked with doing a SWOT analysis. And a
Mm,
SWOT analysis is where you identify strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats for your company.
mm,
And one of the opportunities that I signified on that SWOT analysis was the cannabis industry. This was, several years ago. So I think at the time only California, Oregon, Washington, and Colorado were pretty much the only legal states. And so it was very much so in its infancy. And through that, I kind of just stuck with it. I kind of just paid attention to the industry and watched it grow over the years. I wasn't actually a user of cannabis until I got into the industry. I'm a very research focused guy. I want to research everything about a product before I consume it.
mm.
So if anybody is watching this and they're concerned about it, you have your stamp of approval from Tyler and all his research that he's done on the product. But
Very good.
um, no, so we kind of just watched it, and then as I moved up in ASI and got into positions where I could actually start working on these things, I began immediately, and that's kind of how we came up with the first iteration of CSQ, which was a much lower level GMP type audit. And then after we got really good feedback from that, we decided to turn it into a full blown certification program that's accredited.
Um, One of the things I like about the industry is how collaborative it is, and I see that you're on a lot of boards and a lot of groups, work with a lot of associations. Is that experience, that collaborative experience, different in the cannabis industry from what you experienced in food and beverage?
It is. It is. I think there's a lot of input, and everyone in the industry is very outspoken about their concerns. And we're kind of in a unique uh, place right now where us as an industry, we are literally shaping how the industry is going to be for years to come, which is really cool to be a part of. But I think it also helps with people speaking out and giving their opinions in the industry and working together and wanting to come to some kind of agreement on standardization, whether it's testing methods or audit standards or whatever. Whereas the food industry, it's been around for so long that now everyone kind of has their own ways of doing things. They have, all these trade secrets that they want to keep, and it's more competitive at this point in time than the cannabis industry, where it's kind of a more approach. Hey, if we get this initiative passed, this is going to help all of us, so we should work together.
So, who are some of the people that are the most outspoken in your opinion?
As far as organizations go, obviously I'm very involved with NCIA. I think a lot of the work that they've done over the years has been great for the industry. I think, the next step for NCIA would probably be what I would love to see is putting together regulations for the federal government, so a template of regulations, so that when we get to the point of federal legalization, the government at least has something to look at that was put together by the industry for the industry and kind of has a starting point. I think that's really the next direction of all these organizations is working with the FDA and USDA and other government agencies to once again shape the industry into not only what we want to see, but what's going to protect consumers as well.
Do you already have the regulations written up? Just like, hey, just put your logo on these and forward it.
Yeah. Yeah, if I could work on some FDA regulations right now, I totally would, but I just don't have the time.
Understood. Well, so what are your expectations for, let's say, the next 5 years, both for CSQ and the industry as a whole?
I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of things passed in government. The Safe Banking Act. If we don't get federal legalization this year, I think that will probably be the one thing that does pass this year. And that's mainly because the banks are also asking for it. But also, I think there's going to be some pushes for federal legalization. Hopefully, we see it in the next 5 years. I think we will. But there's also going to be a big push for social equity and diversifying the industry as a whole, whether it be bringing more women leaders into the industry, Black and brown people into the industry, et cetera. I think there will also be, we're going to see a lot of push for expungement of minor cannabis crimes. So there's a lot of things that are kind of sitting on the table, if you will, and it just kind of depends on which things the government picks up first and passes first. But I think there's a lot of good things around the corner for the industry, and we're going in the right direction.
Has CSQ run into any problems regarding banking?
Oh, absolutely. I'm dealing with it right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, yeah, we're actually in process of switching to a cannabis friendly bank. Even though we are not plant touching, we don't even actually go out and perform the audits. Our bank will not cash any of our checks anymore because we have the word cannabis in our
I was
name.
going to say, because it's in the name, right?
Yep.
Man, that's just frustrating.
It is. It's extremely frustrating. But the thing that gets me is the same bank will approve certification bodies who actually go out and do the audits, but cannabis isn't in that name. So
Yeah. Oh man, I'm sorry. I hear it a lot, so I definitely feel for you. Is there any, from an equipment standpoint, is part of the certification or meeting standards, does any of it have to do with automation or using state-of-the-art equipment, or is it more of is it more like cleanliness and safety?
a little bit of both. So as far as automation goes, there's no requirement for automation. For extraction, it does have to be a closed loop system, and that's just for safety and fumes reasons. We don't want employees inhaling those harsh fumes and or creating ignition sources in the extraction room that can cause explosions, things like that. So from extraction equipment, there is specific requirements associated with that, and then the make of the equipment, how it is, making sure that it is hygienic design, which typically means stainless steel, making sure that your cleaning equipment, doesn't have any wood in it, no hard plastic that can break off into product, things like that. So there are things around equipment, but not necessarily that, hey, you have to use this specific type of machine or equipment. Additionally, there's procedures around or requirements around calibrating those equipment. So if you're using thermometers or temperature monitors, how are you calibrating those? How are you calibrating your scales, your metal detection equipment, X-ray machines, whatever you might be using in your facility to ensure your product is safe and of the highest quality? How are you calibrating those to ensure that it's meeting the requirements?
Okay, very good. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, or anything in particular that you want to make sure the CEN audience knows about CSQ and your work?
No, I think that we're just trying to spread the word now that the certification program is now publicly available, so facilities can go and get certified. You can reach out to either one of the two certification bodies who are listed on our website and get more information about the pricing and how they can help you get through certification. So yeah, I think that's about it. Just making sure that the word is spread about CSQ, and of course, I hopefully people watch this and read through the standard and read through the requirements. And your feedback's always welcome. So we always encourage that, because this is not just a standard that we released and it's done. This is a evolving standard that's going to evolve with the industry itself. And as new best practices come out or new scientific discoveries come to our attention, we will update the standard accordingly.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for taking the time today, Tyler. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, David.